Hi everyone, Linda here, and we are on February 14th. We are doing 4 chapters. I'm covering Numbers 36 and Deuteronomy chapters 1 through 3. So this is the last chapter in Numbers, and it's about the women who inherit the property. Just to answer the problem, it's when a father's inheritance and he only has daughters and there are no sons, what were they going to do about it? And basically, that story chapter line basically says that the land inheritance would stay within the allotted tribes. So if the daughters are encouraged to marry within the tribe, so that the property rights of that daughter would be the inherited land would stay within the tribe allotments. So that's in a nutshell. And just to highlight that verse 10, basically marriage to first cousins back in the ancient Hebrew days and society, it was quite acceptable. And it was to allow, again, the tribes to keep the allotted portion of the land. So I want to end with Numbers, and Numbers basically started in the wilderness, and this last chapter now ends they are in the plains of Moab, close to the Jordan River, ready to make their way into the promised land. An overview now of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is the 5th book of the Torah, and Moses is the bottom line of Deuteronomy. It's basically the speeches that Moses has given, the final words of wisdom, and the warnings to the Israelites. Moses is probably about 120 years old. He's recounting and preparing for the next move of God, in that he's going to die, and he knows that, and they're going to be making the way ready of the Israelites, of this new generation going into the promised land. So this old generation has died out, and because of, frankly, their lack of faith and loyalty, and now this new generation of Israelites are ready to enter the promised land. Moses, there are several major words that you can continue to read on. And Moses continually in Deuteronomy states to go possess the land. And prophetically, you will read as you continue to read on about the storyline that it is about this famous passage that in Deuteronomy 6 that you will cover tomorrow, that it is about listening and loving God, and that God requires a faithful heart, a transformed heart. And that verse in Deuteronomy 6 that I am not covering, but that is in the next chapters of tomorrow's tale, is that it is, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. So I just wanted to say that because this is contextual of all of what's going on in the continuation of what God's promises and covenant is to the Israelites and to this promised land that they're going to walk in. So chapters 1 through 3, if I could give an overview of those chapters, it's about God's grace and people's rebellion. Deuteronomy 1, Moses reviews the events, and it says it's only 11 days to travel from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea. I'm not pronouncing correctly, but the Israelites, it took 40 years. So Moses gives this historical review of the pilgrimage to the promised land, and he starts to give a review of what happened when they left Mount Sinai, God's faithfulness in instructing Moses to appoint leaders of the tribes to help with the administration, and God's clear order to go and occupy the land. You will read on, and that Israel sends out 12 spies to scope the land that is currently occupied by the Amorites, and only 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, return with faith and trust that they could take this land with victory. The all other 10 spies are afraid. Bottom line, not trusting and disobeying God has disastrous consequences that generation would not live to see the goodness of the land, and including Moses. He, as you know, he has a disobedient uh, uh, event that happens with not speaking the rock but striking the rock that we know about in Exodus. But I want to say, in focusing on God, God in his grace and his promises, he honors the ancestors of the tribes that would take possession of the land. There would be ancestors that would go take the land. And he's included because of Caleb and Joshua's faithfulness. They will actually go physically into the land of promise. The highlights are verse for me were 29 and 34. You can read them for yourselves. But my life application is, I want to say, is that God goes ahead and he fights your battles. Remember your spiritual markers of God's goodness and faithfulness to you. See, the Israelites should have remembered the faithfulness of God when they were in the land of Egypt. And all this grumbling and complaining is not faith. Faith gets you out. Faith gets you into the promises of God. It gets you out of your wilderness. Faith is a positive response appropriated to God's promises. Let's go into chapter Deuteronomy 2. That is remembering Israel's wilderness. And the verse that was highlighted to me, verse 7, he has watched over every step through this great wilderness. During these 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you, and you lacked nothing. Now, God gave specific territories to specific peoples, groups, and spoke to the Israelites through Moses of what to do and the warnings he had and how to do it. He's into the details. God speaks even in the wilderness moments. There are specific things of what to do and when to do. So I want to just, share with you, that's so much brought me into Psalm 23, verse 1, and many of you know it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And here he says, even in the great wilderness, he was watching over the Israelites. They lacked nothing because they had a God that was in the center camp, that was hovering, that was there and is there, and they forgot who they were trusting on. Sadly, in verses 14 and 15, the Israelites disobey, they die in the wilderness, and God had vowed what would happen is that they would be eliminated from the community. But it reminds me of Hebrews 11:6, that without faith, it would be impossible to believe God, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and he is a rewarder for those who diligently seek him. Yet, you see God's grace in these passages that while there were consequences to the disobedience, their lack of faith, God allowed their descendants to enter into the promised land. So I just wanted to really encourage you to see the grace of God, that his promises of the chosen people, this group of Israelites, are that he wants them to be a people group that's wholly set apart and that will honor God and call out to their Lord. So Deuteronomy 3, victory is over Og of Bashan, the land division east of Jordan, and it talks about Moses being forbidden to enter into the land. So again, God is a God of specifics. He tells the Israelites through Moses that they will conquer Sidon and the victory over Og. And the bottom line is that he will back up his words. He fights their battles, as God says. You will find in this storyline the tribes of Judah and Gad ask Moses to settle east of the Jordan rather than in Canaan, and he's allowed them to do so. So God gives grace in their tribal allotment, in their placement of where they're going to physically be and when to be. You can read into the details. And God hears Moses, because Moses also inquires, can he enter into the promised land? And God says no to Moses. However, God's grace is he allows Moses to view the land before he dies and goes up to Pisgah Peak. He allows Moses and commissions. Moses gets to commission Joshua to lead the people across. I just wanted to share as we ponder and think about the study of his word right now. I look at this and I see three trials. One, that we could go and look back and give glory to our past or look at the glory of Egypt. So we got to look at the past bondages and number one, recognize our past is our past and that we have been set free from the bondages of the view of Egypt, of the past of what Egypt has. It's not good. We've got Jesus Christ now that we are glorifying, we're looking at. Two, we can look at our present and we can complain in our circumstances. You see the Israelites doing that. When we complain, it can bring a present bondage. It's not operating in faith. And three, we can look inward and glorify our own desires. You know, look at what Moses did. He was following God, but then in a circumstance of his own place, he had anger and he looks at that rock that he strikes to give water. And instead of doing what God says to speak to the rock, he strikes the rock with his disobedience, with his own anger. And he's looking to himself. And that is the potential of bondage. So I just see these three trials and they were just so highlighted as we're looking through the Old Testament and just pondering on what I see through the Old Testament. Share, please, of your passages that you find in the discussion group about what God has been highlighting to you. Bye for now.